This exploit is the best way to level Merchant in Season 13. Before we get started, I am currently trying to make it to 15,000 subscribers, and if you could help me get there, that would mean a lot to me. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Also, before we get started, I want to thank this commenter who pointed out this exploit to me and led me to this entire thing. In order to get started with this exploit, you are going to need to head to the Devil's Roar. Specifically, you want to go south of Devil's Thirst and east of Ashen Reaches. And this is the area you want to be in for the entire exploit. Once you are there, you need to vote for the Merchant Ashen Medley quest. You want to sail to it and do not dive to it because you're already where you need to be. You want to keep voting and canceling for this quest until you get a lost shipment that comes from the outpost to Ashen Reaches. And if you don't get that, just cancel it, restart, keep going until you get that. So from the outpost to Ashen Reaches, and this route is only available in the Medley quest, which is why you specifically have to vote for that. Once you get a lost shipment from the outpost to Ashen Reaches, you can move on. And like I said, if you don't get that quest, just cancel it and revote a bunch of times until you do. It can take a ton of tries sometimes. Also, here in a second, this is going to look like a previous exploit, but I promise there's a few things about this one that makes it so much better for these lost shipment kind of exploits. Once you get the right quest, you're going to look for clouds of birds in the sky, and you're going to want to head to the one that's the closest to Ashen Reaches, and that is going to be hopefully the shipwreck with the manifest. However, you may also find yourself in a situation where you will see other clouds of birds, and they're within cannon shot of where you are, where the shipwreck is, or anywhere along your short route to the shipwreck. You should shoot out to these different clouds of birds that are part of the quest as often as possible, again, especially if they're in range of cannon shot and they're not going to slow you down at all to check them. You want to check them for extra loot that's worth going to grab, and more importantly, the key for the cargo hold. Because this route is in such a small confined area, you have a pretty high chance of finding the key and allowing you to get the cargo hold, which is significantly better than just getting the manifest. Whether you get the key or not, you can still head to that ship manifest area, and again, this isn't a much smaller area, so this is much faster than the previous version of the manifest exploit. And after getting the manifest and checking some possible spots for the key, that shouldn't even take 5 minutes. And once you're done with that quest, you're just gonna cancel it and restart it. Again, that's after you've already got the manifest, you've got the cargo hold if you can, and you're done looking for the key. So don't cancel it until you're done with all those steps, because if you do, this stuff's gonna despawn. So after you cancel the medley voyage, vote until you see that same thing. Outpost to Ashen Reaches. Make sure it's not Ashen Reaches to Outpost or Ashen Trader to Ashen Trader. It's just that specific one. That's the only one that works for where you're at. Also, remember that after voting, yes, you're gonna look for the birds in the sky, but also check your immediate area right after voting. It's fairly common to get ships that are pretty close together and can sometimes be almost touching or directly under you, which you may not notice right away. And it does sometimes take a second for the birds to spawn, so you may not even notice that the birds spawned until you're already sailing away. And then at that point, you may even mistake it for one that you've already explored. So make sure to be patient and look around, even up straight above you, for the birds after you vote for one of these quests again. Once you have the new quest up, you're not just looking for that new shipwreck, you're also looking for all of the potential key locations around the entire thing. And another thing that I want to point out that was very confusing to us, but that you may run into. For some reason, every time there's a big cloud of birds just to the south of Devil's Thirst, it's just a manifest in the water. There is no shipwreck. And that also means that there's no cargo hold. So if you think that your shipwreck is between the rock south of Devil's Thirst and Devil's Thirst itself, there's no need to even try and shoot out to go get the key, because from my experience, most of the time there is not even a shipwreck there. There's just a manifest floating in the water, which is nice because you don't have to go find it, but it could be a big waste of time if you're trying to find that key for it. So if you do see that, go over, see if that glitch is happening to you, but if it is, just grab the manifest and move on, cancel it, because you're not going to be able to get the cargo hold for that one. Again, this version of the exploit is so much better because the actual quest itself is contained in a much smaller area than the regular Ashen Lost shipments. You don't have to traverse halfway across the map for these. You're only going like a 2 islands distance, which again makes it much easier to find the key, makes the range of where the final shipwreck is actually spawning a lot smaller, and just makes this exploit so much better. So how much more efficient does it make it? Well, we're going to get to that in a few minutes, but first I need to give you guys 2 examples for this exploit using slightly different methods and strategies, as well as different ways to enter this exploit, so that way you guys can figure out which strategy best fits you and your crew. The first demo of this was a mixture of testing the exploit as a whole, as well as actually trying different strategies for it. However, for this demo, we decided to try and get as many keys as possible while also getting as many manifests that spawn close to us as possible. Again, we were testing some, so we weren't as efficient as we could have been, and we also were kind of just going back and forth between trying to see which one we could get the most of. Now, on the second demo, we did focus more on manifests, but we'll get there in just a second. So for the first one, we had spawned at Ancient Spire, which was close enough for us to just go ahead and sail there. Now, if you ever aren't close enough to sail there quickly. I'm going to show you how to deal with that in just a second, as well as a different entry strategy to this entire exploit. Right after we arrived in the exploit spot, we voted and got the shipwreck right next to us. And I mean like swimming distance, sword dash distance, super close to us. Because the shipwreck was right next to us and the key was probably going to be further away, we just went ahead and grabbed the manifest and moved on. The next quest we put up, we noticed a couple of clouds of birds, and on our way to the actual shipwreck, we stopped at a few of them and shot out to a few of them. And lucky for us, the key was there. And so when we got to that shipwreck, we were able to collect both the manifest and the cargo hold contents. We continued to get a key every 2 to 3 shipwrecks, again, just shooting out to ones that were close by on our route. And sometimes the clouds of birds were directly on our route to the shipwreck anyways, so they were worth checking and grabbing that extra loot. And we were also grabbing all of the manifests that were close enough for us to justify getting. So if they spawned really close, we didn't even go for the key. We just went for the manifest because they're already right there. And then we put up a new one and kept moving. We even had a couple shipwrecks spawn so close that they were nearly touching. And once again, when you vote for that second quest, be sure to check everywhere around you, including right next to where you're at and above you. And if you aren't sure if you have checked a shipwreck or not yet, just go ahead and check it again and make sure that it's not one that you haven't explored, because you'd hate to cancel the quest and miss out on a free manifest, which is worth quite a bit of golden reputation. I will say that more than once while testing this, we almost sailed away from a shipwreck because we didn't realize that it had spawned super close to us, and we were assuming that it was one from our previous run and that we were just sailing, like that we were just looking for the new one. From our first run, we got 7 manifests and 3 cargo holds in just under 40 minutes. That 40 minutes also includes all of our sailing time from the outpost there and to the outpost back, which we went back to Ancient Spire to sell because of other ships in the area, which means that we had pretty long sailing time. That also includes all of the selling time and the time that we were using to test different strategies, shoot out to different places, and test different methods of canceling the voyages. So you could do this much more effectively than our first try, which is exactly what we're going to try and do in our second try. But we also just tested different approaches to this exploit, so realistically we could do a lot better. So that's why I went for our second attempt, to see how good we could do. Obviously with not very much experience, but with some at this point. We were still testing a few things, but this one should definitely be more efficient than the last one if we actually learned anything. The second run of the exploit, we decided to focus more on the actual manifests, just because shooting out to the keys was kind of a gamble, and while it did help most of the time, the manifests were so close together that it might be better, so we wanted to test it. This time, however, when we loaded in, we did spawn quite a bit further away, which gives me an opportunity to tell you guys about our new entry for this exploit. Rather than just sailing there, we went ahead and dove to the shores of Gold Talltale to get closer to where we needed to be, obviously coming up at Marrow's Peak Outpost. But we knew that this would give us an opportunity to start this pretty successfully. We could cycle the same quest for the same plan to get one from the outpost to Ashen Reaches. This would allow us to complete the quest as normal on our way to the spot that we were going to be doing the exploit at. This started us off with a cargo hold and a manifest, even though we were sailing a route that we would have already had to sail to get to where we were going. Once getting the cargo and the manifest on the boat, we followed a similar plan to last time, but again, this time this idea was to just chase the manifest and pick up as many keys as we could that weren't out of our way, but not shooting out far and swimming to them just to see if they were there. But we did need to check for them because the cargo holds were still worth quite a bit of extra golden reputation. Once again, we even had multiple shipwrecks spawn right next to each other while we were doing this, making it really easy to collect, but kind of hard to realize that the new shipwreck was right under us. And yes, again, we got ones that were even almost touching. This run was also where we discovered that spawn that I talked about earlier that only drops the manifest. So again, if you see this big cloud of birds in this specific spot, as I mentioned earlier, make sure to check it and see if you're getting the same glitch as us, because I would hate for you guys to waste your time getting the key when the shipwreck doesn't actually spawn. Also, before I get to how much we actually collected on this whole run, I do want to mention that if our exploits aren't your thing, which I don't know why you're here, but if exploits aren't your thing, or this one gets patched, these medley voyage versions of these Ashen Lost shipments are so much better, even if you're just doing them normally. Because it's confined to such a small area and you only have to sail about 2 to 3 islands away rather than halfway across the map, you are able to do these regularly also much quicker and much more efficiently than you'd ever be able to do any other form of lost shipment. So even if you're just grinding these out, try the medley version of it and see how you like it. Now, on to the part that I know you guys have been waiting for. How much can you actually make while doing this, and what is the maximum potential profit per hour for this exploit? Run 1 took us 40 minutes. It gave us about 100k gold, which isn't insane, but we got 4 levels. And remember, that is with sailing, selling, and testing time. This exploit is good for gold, but the main use, as we're going to see when we go through this, is reputation. The second run, we got 11 manifest and 2 cargo holds, and it took us about 50 minutes. Once again, including all the diving, sailing, selling time, and a little bit of testing time, but much less testing time this time. From run 2, we made about 150k and 5.5 levels in 50 minutes. I also do want to mention that both sessions were sold with a grade 5 emissary flag, which shouldn't be hard to get while doing this exploit, but just keep that in mind as that will greatly impact how much you're making for golden reputation off of this. Taking all that into account, as well as what you guys could do, because I know you guys are much better players than me, the total maximum that you should be able to make with this exploit, again, this is with a very experienced crew, and after you've done this a few times with some practice, you should be able to make about 200 to 250k gold per hour and about 7 to 10 levels per hour. Now, you could also do crazy things with things like a full galleon, rowboats, a bunch of experienced players, and trying to do crazy stuff like position rowboats around the map with different people, using exploits that take advantage of how to vote with just 2 people on a galleon, different things like that. You could probably make it more efficient, but for the average crew that's just has a lot of practice at this, you should be looking at about 200 to 250k gold per hour and about 7 to 10 levels per hour. If you guys have any tips to make this exploit any better, or you think I missed something, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. And please let me know if you guys have any exploits that I haven't covered. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm currently trying to make it to 15,000 subscribers, and if you could help me get there, that would mean a lot to me. Either way, thank you guys so much for watching. I do truly hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.